Amid fears of an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah forces in Lebanon, the two sides on Sunday mounted the biggest round of cross-border strikes since the Gaza war began. It started Sunday morning with Israel bombing dozens of sites along the southern border with Lebanon in a preemptive attack. In response, Hezbollah ended up launching hundreds of rockets and drones. Within hours, though, both sides appeared to de-escalate, at least for the moment. But both sides have also signaled that the violence and these dangerous tensions could continue. Hezbollah said its operation is vengeance for the Israeli assassination of a senior commander, and it had finished those operations for the day, but it left open the possibility of more action. On the Israeli side, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that what happened today is not the final word. For weeks now, Israelis have waited in anticipation of a major attack by Hezbollah in retaliation for an airstrike last month in a suburb of Beirut, which killed one of Hezbollah's commanders, Fuad Shukr. Iran, which backs both Hezbollah and Hamas, has also vowed retribution for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas political leader who was on a visit to Tehran. Iran so far seems to be shy of any direct attack at Israel, preferring to use its proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas, instead. After the Hamas-led attacks on October 7th, which triggered the war in Gaza, Hezbollah began firing frequently on Israel, prompting widespread Israeli retaliation. Repeated strikes, counter-strikes, and threats have forced more than 160,000 people to evacuate on both sides of the border. And that has stoked fears that the conflict would ignite a full-blown regional war, which would pit not just Israel against Hezbollah, but also Israel against its patron, Iran. Before dawn on Sunday, Israel's military used about 100 warplanes to strike more than 40 different launch sites in Lebanon, saying it had prevented a major attack. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 3 people had been killed and 2 others hurt, while Israel said a soldier of its was killed and 2 others wounded during Hezbollah's barrage of rockets. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said in a televised address on Sunday that Hezbollah had carried out more than 300 rocket launches at military sites in Israel, and that would make it the group's largest barrage since the Gaza war. Israeli officials did say that that figure that was given by Hezbollah was somewhat lower. Either way, the attack did very little damage, according to a statement put out by the Israeli military. Analysts say that both Israel and Hezbollah are unlikely to want to endure a war which could devastate both countries and kill thousands. And there is prospectively very little chance of a strategic victory for either side. Hezbollah wants to say that they have registered a response to Israel and now wants to move on from this phase of anticipation of a wider escalation. Both Israel and Hezbollah quickly claimed a victory of sorts. Israel for its pre-dawn preemptive strikes against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah for its subsequent firing of rockets and drones at northern Israel. By Sunday breakfast time, both sides were employing the language of containment. Hezbollah announced that it had completed the first stage of its attack to avenge the assassination of its senior commander, Fuad Shukr. In fact, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said that he had spoken with the US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and that the two had discussed the importance of avoiding any regional escalation. All of the reported Israeli targets in Lebanon were within 30 miles of the border. It was focused on thwarting the threat from Hezbollah's rocket and drone arsenal rather than striking the broader infrastructure the terror group possesses. On the other side of the border, Hassan Nasrallah was similarly suggesting that the current round of escalation might be at an end and that Hezbollah was willing to reconsider the reprisals for Fuad Shukr's death as concluded. The United States has sought to prevent any wider regional war, in part by trying to advance a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. But Washington has also deployed 2 of its aircraft carrier groups and a guided missile submarine, both of which to deter Iran and its allies from attacking Israel.
We have been concerned about the conflict escalating into an all-out regional war since October 7th, and we have worked round the clock with partners and allies, moving military assets, engaging in intensive diplomacy, both publicly and privately behind the scenes, to avert that outcome. We continue to work to avert that outcome. And our hope is that the events of last night do not spill out into an escalation that leads to regional war.
The talks on a Gaza ceasefire and the release of hostages resumed as planned on Sunday after senior Israeli and Hamas officials arrived in Cairo and sat down with mediators. Despite a full-bore diplomatic push from the Biden administration, both Israel and Hamas remain far apart on some of the critical issues, leading officials to conclude that any immediate breakthrough is unlikely. Hassan Nasrallah said that Hezbollah waited for 4 weeks to retaliate for the killing of Fuad Shukr to give enough time for negotiators to try and find an elusive ceasefire. While most of Hezbollah's weapons were fired at targets in northern Israel, some were launched at a military site in central Israel, which reflects the growing sophistication of Hezbollah's arsenal. Israeli and American officials said that these ammunitions were drones and that they were all shot down. Nasrallah identified one of the targets in central Israel as the Glilot military base just outside Tel Aviv. It's the headquarters of Unit 8200, which is an elite signals unit which the Hezbollah believe was connected to the assassination of Fuad Shukr. That base, Glilot, lies about 70 miles away from the Lebanese border. Hostilities between Hezbollah and Israel, closely tied to the long-running shadow war between Israel and Iran, have heated up dramatically since the Israel-Hamas war began back in October. Hezbollah has said it was acting in solidarity with Hamas and that its attacks on Israel would stop only when the offensive in Gaza ends. Some Israeli officials have also suggested that Israel could invade Lebanon to push Hezbollah back from the border. And Iran, which is Hezbollah's patron, has still yet to open an account with Israel, blaming it for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, while he was in Tehran. Israel officially took responsibility for the death of Fuad Shukr, but not for that of Ismail Haniyeh. Israel has long been readying for a war in Lebanon and is probably much better prepared than it was on its southern front when Hamas took it by surprise back in October. All in all, both sides, Israel and Hezbollah, seem to be pulling back from the brink of dangerous rhetoric. And hopefully this pulling back is a signal to both the Israeli Defense Forces and to Hezbollah rank and file that neither side is wishing to escalate matters as of now.